Welcome to the FrequentSEE Network. Frequent, capital S, capital E, self-empowering experts giving you a self-empowering experience, sharing authentic connections about sound, light, energy, frequency, vibration, and most of all, love. There is nothing more authentic than being the love that you are. You are invited to join us in our freaky side of life, where you can change your frequency and upgrade your life. We are 4 generations of women empowering you to love your life even more. Here we flow.
Everything begins in the heart, I believe. And then, as even heart math, they say, far more information comes from the heart to the brain than the brain to the heart. And to know that the tongue is a appendage to the heart, and then the vocal cords, the vagus nerve, which is our connection, central nervous system connecting between the gut, heart, and brain, passes through the vocal cords. And so everything about us is coming out through our words, right? The sound of our voice. And then that information is coming out. And Sherry says about the connection of the brain, is processing it or calculating it. What would you say to that, Kristen?
Our brain is listening to the sound of our voice. Is that what's happening? I'm not sure. Because when she does her calculation, she has a calculation of frequency through brainwave multiples. And in what she says what the bioacoustics is and how she's able to determine things is the brain is calculating things through math and frequency. I would require to have a conversation with Sherry about this and what brainwave multiple means to her, because all of this getting into bioacoustics is she's pioneered this, and so a lot of the terminology is like her definition of what it means. And I know that yes, doing brainwave multiples, we've got to bring it down into a spectrum to where we can actually hear it. Not that we don't hear the higher brain waves of what the frequency actually is, but we can't hear it with our physical ears, but we're still receiving the frequency. So brainwave multiples is bringing it down into an area where our hearing range is, and we can experience it fully. That's very interesting.
And for me, it's bringing it back full circle, back to how we feel. And then when we're talking about the authoring our world, reclaiming our authorship of our world, there's so much that's connected, the connective tissue, the fascia, and how that is it's almost like some wiring that's also has information and data traveling through it, through all that process. And so I'm just feeling this big web of information and how our body just is communicating. And then we're doing that as a web of life through each other and then out into, the cosmos. So you had talked about, Kristen, as above, so below, and then, in that beginning form. So I don't know if I'm making any sense right now. I guess I'm processing. We are a central communication center, and a processing center, I guess. I always say the heart drive, defrag your hard drive, and was one of the training that I was doing along with Julie Uplandby of the Diamond Light World, because she worked with the Diamond Light Grid. And we I made up this where we could give information and data and help people defrag, like a computer, and your hard drive. And then we hear from Bob, he talks about the human operating system. And so I'm seeing all this connective tissue, the fascial layer, holding it all together.
Yeah, and Cynthia, I think there's some really cool information here, which leads to questions, to gain understanding, more and more understanding. Our fascia level requires us to feel on some level. I'm curious because we do have and experience frequencies that we don't generally hear, meaning, the planets that are moving, they're very slow and low sounds to where we're not really picking up on it. But when we have a full body experience and we can use our senses, we feel it deeper. So to me, when we can feel and hear and experience with our senses, it drives more things to manifest faster, to where we are experiencing something faster. And this is why I'm curious if fear is being given in the media and all these other places, because in order for these frequencies to have some sort of fascia or experience, we require to feel as well. That's a very interesting thing.
Yeah, and fear cuts us off because we go into fight or flight and we just get cut off. Instead of having the experience, we resist and try to avoid truth and reality, It's very restrictive, way.
Well, and you're using the word restrictive, and it restricts us, shuts off flow. So much in that, what you just said, brings us back to that layer of, and I was thinking also, Kristen, when you were talking about all those things, and then the heart being a perceptive organ that feels, also is wrapped with the pericardium, which is a fascial layer around the heart.
And not just fear, but just everything that we're doing is to the medicine, the food, all the things are to keep us numb and not feeling. It's disconnected and out of flow.
They yes, and
even to the sugar things.
Yes, just like we talked about, feeling insecure. And what you said, though, shutting off feeling, because if we don't feel, we only can discern from the brain. And that's what a lot of this stuff does. It's able to, if we are not connected to heart, when we are connected to our hearts, there's no one outside of us or technology that can control us. Do you know that? Yes.
And I feel that there is a really cool this plus equation here that we can decode to share it in very simple terms of what we're experiencing right now.
I agree. Ooh, so much is coming in on this whole thought process. And
Tesla's frequencies were a lot of the main frequencies that Sherry uses. They're in the 900s. When we bring them down in brainwave multiples, we're bringing them down into 12, 20s, and 24s and 30s, which is our beta layer, our beta level where we're in consciousness right here, right now. And I imagine there's some interesting, when you're matching with your own brain waves, the level that it's communicating in your body, that's much more easy to heal. Like when I'm in a delta brainwave, which I'm breathing 2 to 4 to 6 times a minute, I'm not really emotionally processing because I'm out of consciousness. I'm in a very, I'm doing more bioelectric work. That's the bioelectric and biomagnetic level of the body. And that's doing a lot of healing on its own. But when I'm in consciousness, I'm in this muscular, emotional level of the body. And that's when it's best to, I imagine, process what you're feeling. Because you're meant brain waves. Whereas Tesla was in the 900s, I would be very curious if that would be considered gamma, which is what Einstein and all of those would, when they would rock and they'd try to get into, they'd go into alpha, beta, alpha, theta. There's kind of a portal that you jump now into high brain waves, but it's called gamma, and it's where you experience divine connection, connecting to universe, gaining all your answers. Yeah, so I'm just kind of connecting the numbers to what it means in our body system.
Yes.
That's very fascinating.
Now, when we're talking about Tesla, are we talking as far as?
I meant Rife frequencies.
Well, yes, that's what I was wondering, Rife, because then I was thinking back to micro Teslas, because a lot of measurements within the medical device, the beamer, which is bioelectromagnetic energy regulation. A lot of the measurements they use within there, not only hertz, but they talk about micro Tesla in some measurements. So that's where I was going with what you were speaking about. And so yes, Rife. And I was just researching a lot of information about Rife last night. And I also was going into everything that we're learning from bioacoustics from Sherry, as well as I look back through a lot of these. There's these new, well, it's not new, it's been around a little while, the vibroacoustics, where they're utilizing, a sound therapy along with these vibration pillows, that have the speakers that Sherry, I know they've been developed from Sherry's work. I'm sure of it. And then they create some, tones within the music at different levels. And I found about 3 or 4 different companies that are out there. And one is starting these, let me see here. I think I had a big research evening. I stayed up until 1:30 because I was in this fascination of sound therapy all the way around. Energy, sound, light, frequency, and vibration. I love living in that world. It's so fascinating. And then having this conversation when we all get together in our FrequentSEE group, that we bring it all together and can just flow with it. And it all is connected, right?
Yes.
So there's this one company called In Harmony. Iaminharmony.com, and I'll send these out too, where they find tools for your mindfulness practice at home, and check out In Harmony's meditation cushions and vibroacoustic therapy devices for a vibrational experience. And then there's vibro sound healing. And so all of these things I really believe, because they're using
A subwoofer.
a subwoofer. That's it. A subwoofer. And they implant these subwoofers into the tables or into pillows, into these seats and things like that. And I happen to have one from a while back, from a Vibroacoustics, which actually was, I'm just looking, a daily dose of sound therapy. And she speaks in there about Sherry and her work, because I know she did a lot of her studies and stuff with Sherry. And she developed some sound therapies that she has now for free. She used to sell them. So now she's turned them into free low tones, frequencies, music. So it's interesting to go and explore what is out there around this whole thing. And gosh, we've kind of stayed in authorship of finding things that actually help us have and stay in our being, to help us be the authors of our world, right? Reclaim our authorship through activating our own information, this beautiful human operating system that we have, that we're being given, that we can get information to activate and bring us back to the magnificence of who we are. And claim that authorship, that we're the source of that information. It's all right here within us. And that so much has been deactivated, or we've been dehumanized, is what I tend to feel, that they're turning, there's so much that's being turned off, like we were saying, turning off feeling. So that if we don't feel, which is what we do with our heart, we disconnect, and we have to live from this physical state of being, which is usually in fear. If we weren't in fear, we'd be in our hearts. We'd be connected in our hearts. But fear keeps us outside of our heart, outside of feeling. Because we're looking around, feeling unsafe in our world or whatever. And that's about something like, as fear has been meant, the acronym is false evidence appearing real. We're living in this, false evidence. And how much false evidence is out there to tell us that we're something that we're not? Okay. Full stop.
You're getting all the mm-hms on my end.
Right? That's where they're taking our authorship away from us, censoring us, all of those things, taking the feeling of life away, our self-empowerment, and shutting us off, shutting all those things off, that we have the power to command and author our world. Yes?
Yes. And I think even the myofascial thing is like just getting back into our bodies and our own reality. It's so easy to be pulled away and think that all of these outside things are our world. And it's like, that's not my world and my Mia world. It's like, that's just what's going on outside of me. But yeah, focusing on our own insides and our own connective tissues and how we're connecting with ourselves, and just being aware of that is going to be really empowering.
To me, it goes back to where we started from here in our conversation. Believing and knowing and acknowledging whatever it takes that our information is valid, worthwhile, all of the acknowledgement you can give it before we're ready to, before we share it. That way, when the naysayers come along, or you have even that feeling of disbelief, it won't be able to penetrate your shield of knowledge that you started out to share.
Wonderful. And you brought up, and I remember hearing that last week about a shield. And Kristen, I mean, when I think of something protecting me, that again, what we're facing, the fascia, is the beginning. Wouldn't that be it? Even our skin, right? And then the dermal layer, and then we have the fascial layer. Wouldn't that be the protective layer? And I've always spoken of adipose, the fatty tissue, being a protective layer, which it is, because it fatty tissue is absorbing toxins to protect your organs. It takes the toxins when we can't get rid of them. But then we have that fascial layer. And I remember when I went through my Gil Headley's intensive dissection workshop. It was a 6-day, really intensive dissection workshop. We had 4 bodies that 2 males, 2 females, that we went through, 6 days of going layer by layer through the body and learning so much about the seeing the fascia interconnecting through everything, really. Even within the adipose, there was that little fascia in there. So, yeah, I don't know. I had to bring that up all of a sudden because I just had this memory that showed up.
Well, Cynthia, adipose tissue to me is it's something that protects us. It gobbles up any toxins or anything extra that might not serve us to our best. And gosh, this is such a rich conversation requiring a lot of processing on my end.
And what you brought in, that's exactly how I feel and about adipose, what I learned from my experience all the time, because when we went into the layers of the body, every place that you could see that had maybe some trauma or some surgery or something like that, there was always a fatty layer surrounding it, like pillows, like, protecting it, pillowing up. And I would imagine the trauma that would happen when you're, especially we'll just use surgery as an example, when you're cutting into that area and you're cutting into the, through the body and the fascia and everything. So that trauma alone, and of course, there's going to be our own release of certain chemicals, or our own, molecules of emotion, or what kind of things come in when something gets traumatized, right? Hormones are released, what kind of biochemicals are released and things like that to produce the healing that needs to go on. And does the trauma, are we able to move the trauma out, or or does the trauma stay in? And that's where the body is, uses all kinds of things to, like we said, the adipose removes toxins away from the area. So, you don't, I'm processing too, Kristen. I love that you said that, taking a moment to process. It is so rich, and there's so much information that I have inside of me. And to be able to articulate and just let it all just flow. I'm going to go back into my heart. I'm going to take that breath and let my heart speak, because it knows the beauty of our human body. It's so magnificent how it works. That's all. That's what I'm going to say to all of that.
Yes, I imagine like the end solution for me is to take all of this information and create a system of understanding in a very simple way. So, I mean, it's complex. My brain is, just like we've been talking about, processing, seeing how things fit together. If we can really ponder on this information and figure out a system to put it in, how much it will benefit those who are listening to our podcast or who we connect with, because I feel it's simple and yet it's complex at the same time.
Yes, yes.
I like how Josie keeps bringing it back to like our authorship of, being bold enough and brave enough to speak our truth. And that is so much of the 5 pillars of light, sound, frequency, and vibration, is just whether it's vocalized or just embodying that energy within ourselves.
When we feel safe, secure, supported, valued, and loved, those virtues, okay, we've got pillars, virtues, and then the 5 levels of consciousness that I also speak of, which is awareness or self-awareness, knowledge we seek. After we get the awareness, we seek knowledge or self-knowledge. And then we have self-understanding, understanding. And then we move into acceptance, self-acceptance. And then we move into that beautiful place of the state of our being, love. And in the 5 virtues, what's the final, thing that we have is safe, secure, supported, valued, and loved. And what is energy, sound, light, frequency, and vibration? It's pure love. Source energy, love frequency, baby. So we have the 555. Any frequencies around the 555?
I'm picturing back in my very young days, before I was 20. I don't know what connection it might have to this, but it was brought to mind to me because I'm trying to understand what you guys are talking about with the acoustics, with the all of the layers of the consciousness. That we had a place and it didn't have water on it. My dad bought an acreage and it didn't have any water. So we continued for, 15 years that I lived there, searching for water to dig a well. And that the way that we found water, and it proved to be true, was we got a stick. I don't know if anybody ever heard of it or not, and I don't know what the name.
Dowsing rods.
Yeah, okay. And it's like a forked branch, and you hold it over the ground, and that switch, the base of it would turn over when it got over water. To me, that power is so magnificent to know that can happen, and it was not a fake; it was true. But that can happen within our bodies as well.
Wow, Josie, you rock. How beautiful for you to bring that forth when you're sitting there going, what are these girls talking about?
Studied none of that, And
so perfect. That's so beautiful for this moment.
And I think it brings to mind that, we think, oh, that's just a bunch of fluff, or that's not true. How can you prove that? When you think of that one thing that people did, and it was workable, there's a lot of power there.
Yes, and that right there is also another beautiful podcast to have too around those kind of things, and to have you have that memory that was brought forward for this moment was in its perfection because it belonged here so well. When we're talking about our 4 generations that we have here to share from our knowledge, from our experiences with life. And that's what's so important to connect us, that authentic connection that we all have here today. Even though we were speaking just a little bit more here and there, which, we're going to bring in all kinds of people curious to know more about what we're speaking to, and then to be able to have each one of us bring in something that all of a sudden there's this aha moment of, yeah, I can think of some other things too that actually are a part of this conversation. Such as, you know, when I used to teach around the freaky side of life, change your frequency, change your life. My question always was to people, what's the freakiest thing that ever happened to you? And it got the most amazing conversations going because it was a fun question to ask people. And they ended up sharing things that they had never shared with anybody before. Kind of remind me of Mia and her question at our wellness experience, starting off our grounding ceremony with, have you ever been grounded? And she was actually talking about, have you ever gotten any trouble and had to be grounded and you had to stay at home or something? So we all had a different thought about it. And then all of a sudden it was like aha moment, right? About frequency or being grounded. So we all have a contribution to bring here. And Josie, thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
I imagine we are feeling lots of information and flow throughout our body to think, have thoughts, words, and feelings that are coming up, and gonna go write some notes down and allow for our authentic connection to get into having a new experience. What do you say, girls?
It was a flowing frequency.
I like the ripple effects that it will have. It always leaves me thinking.
And feeling, bringing us back to feeling again.
I remember I stay in my feeling world.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, breathe deep into your heart and love yourself even more today than you did yesterday.